What is up, guys? This is Max Square, and in this video I'm going to be going over how to create cool thumbnails for YouTube. So this is kind of part 2 from the first video, and when I went over how to create banner art and like an avatar and stuff. So that's what we're going to be covering in this video. So as usual, we're going to head over into Photoshop. What we're going to do is create a new document, and we're going to make this 1280 by 720. Now I usually just use 72 resolution, but if you're picky, you can go up to 144 or 300, whatever you want. I use 72, hit OK. Now the first thing we're going to do when we get into our document is we're going to create a shape that is about 850 pixels wide. Now this isn't like some magical number that I just decided to pick. This is just kind of a guide that we're going to use to reference stuff for our text later on. So now that you have this shape, go ahead and create a ruler on each side. There on the left and one on the right. Then you can go ahead and delete the shapes so that we've got a rough guide. This really doesn't have to be perfect, it's just as a reference point. If you want to get picky, you can zoom in and make sure it's pixel perfect if you want. But once you have these guides, this is going to act as kind of a box to where we can put our text inside of. Over the past couple of years, I've played with different sizes in text on the thumbnail, and fitting it inside this box is a really good reference point just because it is still readable on smaller devices on like an iPhone where the thumbnails are like super small and they're pretty much the size of your thumb. Now that we have our template set up, we can get into designing it. Now I usually take like a screenshot from somewhere in the video that focuses on something that we were doing. If I was in After Effects and I was showing you guys something, I take a screenshot of me using After Effects. So for example, if we were in Photoshop and we were working on like this double exposure thing, I would just take a screenshot, Command-Shift-3, just takes a full screen screenshot, and then I can just drag that in. And I usually don't show my dock, just kind of zoom it in somewhat like this, position it where you want it, and then I'll usually add like an overlay, or I might blur that background image so I can get a fill here, fill it with black, bring it down to say 65%, and I will blur this image here. I'll go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and maybe like 5 or 7 pixels is good. You don't want to blur it too much because you still kind of want to see that you're working in an app or whatever you may be doing, but you do want to have some sort of depth of field so that you can focus on the text, which will be the title for our video. So now we can add that text by just clicking in, and I'll say double exposure effect Photoshop tutorial. Now I'll generally align it between these guides, and I'll left justify it and then just scale it in from there so it's edge to edge. Anything beyond this point tends to start hitting the edges of the screen, like I said, for a thumbnail on like a smaller device. I have already built in some margin on the left and right, so if you put it edge to edge, there's still going to be some gaps between the edge and the text, so I think the screen will end about here and here on smaller devices. And after that, you're pretty much done. So all I'll do is take a screenshot from the video and put it as a background. I might blur it, add some sort of gradient or color on top of it, and then I'll just add my text, and then I'll export it and upload it to YouTube. And it's really that simple. You don't have to have crazy design skills to do this. This is just something simple that I made up, and I've pretty much been doing this technique for the past year or so, and it's really easy to do, and I don't have to worry too much about post-production once I finish the video then. Now if you can't get a screenshot that really works, then you can just switch this off, and you can fill this with some cool color, and I'll hit edit fill again, and I'll say color here, and we'll pick like a nice teal blue-ish kind of color, and then we're just gonna make that fill 100%. And now that's a pretty bright color, so if you do like the color and you don't want to mess with that too much, you can add another layer, fill that with black, and then you can just have like a 25% fill on that, maybe even 15, and you can just start dialing that back so it's a little darker and easier to read. Keep in mind that when the thumbnail is really small, you have to have really bold text, so you don't want a lot of bright colors behind the background so that the text is very readable. I tend to not go any text size below about 48 pixels, just for some reason anything below that is really hard to read. And in some cases, when you use a really light font, you can't read it at all. And you can see how in these speed art thumbnails, like it's very readable when it's full screen, but when you scale it down, you can't quite see it. Well guys, that is it for this video. As usual, I will have a download link to the project file so you can mess around with that on your own. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe below. And I will see you guys in the next one. And we're going to call this avatar or icon or profile picture or the square one.